what if I were to make my own rocket? What if I were to make everything and the only cost for the rocket is an engine that I can just change out when I want to reuse the rocket? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that as part of your rocket honor. And we're going to use everyday household items, stuff that we find around, maybe that somebody else would be throwing out. We're going to use those. So let's talk about that. Now, later on in this video, I'm going to show you some other rockets that I've made and or maybe in the process of making. But right now, I just want to show you a couple of things that will help us get started. First of all, you need a cardboard tube. Now, this one that I have right here comes from a roll of paper towels. And one thing that I've noticed is these paper towel tubes are not what they used to be. When I was a kid, they used to be a lot stiffer, but they're making things a lot cheaper nowadays because they're trying to cut costs. And so these don't really work that well. So if you can get a hold of some mailers or other types of tubes that somebody might be throwing away that's a lot stiffer, then go for it. That's what I would use right there. And so anyway, here's this tube. I'm going to use it just for a demonstration tonight. And then later on, I will show you some of the other things that I've done. Now, the other thing that I like to use, and this is a crazy one, is right here, cereal boxes. Yes, cereal boxes are a great source of cardboard. And cardboard is what we use to make the fins. I'm going to show you my method of making the fins so that you understand how to make these fins and how to glue them on and make sure that they are secured to your rocket. So here goes. All right, you find a cardboard box. Could be from cereal, could be from Little Debbie's, could be from something else that your parents buy at the store. And on that box, you will find a seam along one of the corners. Take your finger and stick in that seam and just pull it apart like that. And wow, look at that. Sometimes you get a bonus in there with a whole bunch of coupons that you never knew anything about. Well, anyway, let's see. Silver palette pasta sauce. I've never tried that one. I don't know if anyone here has tried it, but well, that's something else. Anyway, here's a cereal box. I took it all apart. I have the cardboard on the inside, and here is how I like to make my fins. Now, you can choose all kinds of designs for your fins. I'm going to show you a simple one. First, what I like to do is I like to use the seam that's already there on the cardboard because that is a perfect place to bend the to use for a fin, because I like to double up on my fins. I don't like them to be single. I like them to have a double thickness, makes them a little bit heavier, a little bit more sturdy, and I believe that my rockets are probably better off with them, unless I was trying to go for weight. Now, if I was trying to go for weight, there might be some other ways to cut that short. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pretend that this is the outside of my fin, the part that is going to catch the air. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this fin out here. I'm just going to try something. I'm going to cut this out, and let's see how this works. Okay. Let's see here. Well, let's see. Well, that looks like a good fin right there on the side of my rocket. Yeah, but there's one problem. Well, let's look at this. The folded part I needed to be on the outside edge. That means I need my fin to go this way. But wait a minute, that's not going to work. Well, I think I have a solution to that problem. I'm going to go ahead and take my fin and cut up there like this. Now look at this. Now I have a rocket fin, and the outside edge is the folded edge which goes on the side. Now it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to imagine about 1/4 of an inch, maybe just a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch on the inside of my fin here that I want to put a mark on. So I'm going to do that. Let me see if I can do that and be on camera at the same time. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But nope, I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm just going to have to do this and show it to you. I'm going to put a mark here and a mark here. They're about 1/4 of an inch on the inside of the fin. See those two marks? I've got one right here and one over on this side. And then I'm going to take a straight edge. Well, it just so happens that this edge that I cut off is actually kind of straight. It's a little bit crooked, but I think it'll be okay for my purposes. And I'm going to take a ballpoint pen. And a ballpoint pen needs to be one of the thicker ones, not one of the real thin, tiny ones. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line on that fin. Okay? And there is my line. You see that line? Okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to draw on that line again with my straight edge and with my pen. And I am going to press heavy on that cardboard. Basically what I'm doing is I'm cutting about halfway through. And what that does is that allows me to make a nice, wonderful folded crease right there on the edge of my fin. You see that? Okay, and so I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. Let's see if I can get it in the right place. I believe I can. Most of this I can do by sight, but I'm going to go ahead and crease this side in the same way that I creased the other side. And let's see here. Oh, and by the way, when you do this, you have to hold your tongue just right. Let's see here. All right. Here we go. You can probably hear that. There you go. And so now I have one on this side that bends out, one on this side that bends out. The only thing that I want to do is I really don't like that point right there. And you'll see why here in just a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that point off right there where the bend is, and there is my fin. So I'm going to take this, I'm just going to use Elmer's glue, and I will be gluing it onto the side of my rocket, just like that. Okay? Now, the question is, where are we going to glue the fins? How do we make sure that they're even? Because you definitely don't want a crooked fin. If you have crooked fins, it's your rocket's going to go up into the sky all wonky like. And so we want to know how to do this. Well, in the next part of the video, I will show you how to mark the fin, put the fin marks on all the way around the tube. I'll also use that same method to put the launch lug on. And on one of my rockets, I actually used it to make a second set of fins, because I had a rocket that was about 2 feet long, and I put a second set of fins on there, so it had some extra stabilization. But this part right here is the part where I make my fin. And you can experiment with different designs of fins. You can do different sizes, make them bigger, make them smaller, make them curved. You can square them off, you can bring them down to a point. There's all kinds of different things. The main thing is you have a fin with two little tabs here that you can put glue on and glue it to the side of your rocket. All right, I'll see you in the next part of the video. Take care. Hey guys, so I'm back. This is the next part of the video. I'm probably not going to get very fancy with editing with this video, but we'll see what happens. I might have to shorten it up, so I may edit some things out. But the next part of your rocket is you want to know how to put your fins on the rocket. And again, as I said before, this is not the normal tube that I would use. I'll show you some of those later on. But this is a cardboard tube like you would use, and it will work for a rocket, although it's not very sturdy. Okay, so here you go. You have made your fin, and you have the two tabs on the fin right here. And here's another fin that I made, and there's my two tabs. You can see that, and that's going to glue right onto the side of my rocket like this. However, there's one thing. How do you get them straight? You have to figure that out. So, well, here's what you do. First of all, you go and get a piece of paper. Now, I'm cheap, okay? I could have went over and got some notebook paper, but you know what? I saw an envelope laying on the table that was going to get thrown away, and I said, hey, why don't I use that? Because this is another part of this that's consumable. So I cut this piece of envelope, and I cut it to where it would go around the end of my tube. Now, it doesn't have to be super tight, but you also don't want it loose. So you get it nice and snug going around the tube. And if you do get it loose and you're trying to figure out how to get it tighter and it just won't get any tighter, just go around it in the way that overlaps the top. When you go over that part and go around a couple of times, usually it tightens up pretty well. And I tape my tube right there. Okay, I tape the paper onto the tube. Now, I'm going to try this tape right here and hope that it works for me. Because it's actually double-sided and it was all I had at the time. Again, I'm all for making do with what you have at certain times. Okay, so now I've made a sleeve for my tube, and yeah, it can slide up and down. That's exactly what I want it to do. I want it to be able to slide up and down on this tube. Okay, so the next thing I do, and this is the tricky part here, go ahead and pull it off the end of your tube. Now, you have a paper, we're going to put 4 fins on. Well, 4 is a really nice number to use with this because all you have to do is push your paper flat, okay, and put a couple of creases in it. And then you fold it in half again and you put another crease in it. Those creases are exactly where you want your fins to be. Well, how do we figure this out? Well, let's see here. Well, first thing I'm going to do, I can see the creases, so I really don't have to worry much about it. So the question is, how do I get it back on here? Well, that's the part that's kind of a pain. You're going to have to untape it, okay? And then wrap it back around your tube and tape it back on. Okay, there it is, taped back on in its places. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but I can tell that right there, there's a crease, okay? And then 1/4 of the way around is another crease. 1/4 of the way around is another crease. And 1/4 of the way around is another crease. Those are perfect for lining up my fins. So what do? First of all, I need to mark the bottom part, so I scoop my tube, my sleeve down to the bottom part of my tube where it's just above the bottom. Let's see if I can get that. Yeah, there it is. It's just above the bottom. And now I'm going to mark my creases. Okay, I have one right there and one right there. Okay, and I'll put that up to the camera so you can see it. I mark top and bottom. Then I go over here and I mark the next one. And I do that for all 4 of them. Once I have all 4 of them marked, then I know that I'm good to go on where my fins need to be. Now, we ask the question, well, how do you know where the top part is? Or what if you cover it up? Well, here's another thing I like to do. You can go up a little bit higher and you can keep this tube, this paper lined up. Go up just a little bit higher. See, I've got my mark here and a mark here, and I want to go higher. So I kept it lined up with those marks, and now I just go ahead and mark it again. Now sometimes you might be off by a little hair, but that's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to move this on up here. Don't take this off. We're going to keep this on here later because that's going to help us put the launch lug on. So here we go. So we have our 3 marks. Okay, we have the bottom one, we have an upper one, and then we have one a little bit higher than that. And we've done that all the way around the tube in 4 different places. And so all we have to do now is we glue our fins together and glue them on and line them up with those marks. Now, when we get to the gluing part, I'm going to show you some tricks that have helped me with gluing. Alright, so you glue this on and you get 4 of them on there and you are ready to go. And that's all for this section of the video. I'll show you more in the next section. We'll see you then.
Hey guys, how you doing? Last night I made a couple of videos talking about the fins, and I'm hoping to do these in different modules. Today I want to show you a couple more things about our rockets and some different designs that you can come up with. Now, I will tell you this, as far as rockets go, on your first rocket, keep it simple. Just keep it simple, make a basic design, work with that, and then if you want to make a second one that's a little bit more experimental, then go for it. All right, so here's some designs that we made. First, I want to show you this one. This is one I made several years back, and as you can see, it's a tube. It's actually two tubes that are taped together in the middle. I have a 3 engine mount. It's a little more complex for making this rocket. And the only problem with this rocket is only one engine fired off when I had it on the launch pad, and so I'm going to have to redo the mechanism for firing to make sure that it fires off. But had some fun making that. And by the way, just to let you know, the best way I think to paint rockets is to paint your base color and then put some tape on it and paint over another color and then pull that tape off. And as you can see, I've done that here, and that's how I got the red and silver stripes, and then also with my stars up here at the other end. So anyway, that's just something that's interesting I thought you might like to see. Here's another one. This is one that one of my students is making. And so the idea is, what would happen if instead of making regular fins, we made a fin that was in a total circle? And as you can see here, that's what we have, and he has named this one, nicknamed it the plunger. Okay, so this is the plunger. Again, here's another one of my students made, painted the base color, put tape over it, painted another color, took the tape off, and this is what you get. All right. This one here is one of mine. I experimented with it because I said, I wonder what would happen if I made longer fins. And so that's what I've done. I made a much longer fin for this one, and had some fun with the paint and putting different designs on it. And then my last one right here that I have for demonstration is the square rocket. What would happen if we made a rocket that was square? How would it fly? Well, we're going to find out. And this one I've actually made a quadruple engine mount for. And so I'm working on that engine mount. Hopefully it'll come off good and make my rocket fly. So anyway, those are some experimental rockets. And I'll end this module for the video, but I'm going to do some more modules in a few minutes, and I'm going to show you how to mount the fins to the rocket. So here we go. Hope you all are doing well. In this module, I want to show you how to put your model rocket together when you get the fins made. So first I want to show you, this is one of the rockets that another one of my students made. We'll take the nose cone out there. I'll show you how to make that later. But wanted to show you her fins. Very large rocket, this one. And anyway, it's really neat. I'm going to show that, talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. All right, so how do we put the fins on? Well, in the modules I made last night, I explained to you how to make the fins. And so I gave you a template, and you can go to the bottom of this video, and there's a template on there that you can use for making your fins. But anyway, if you look at what I have right here, okay, here's my fin. I fold it over, and I have these two little flaps. And what's going to happen is these flaps are going to be glued onto the side of the fuselage of the rocket. And here they are. I mean, here this is just an experimental fin that I'm not using at the moment. But here's the fins for another student. And so what he's going to do is he's actually going to glue those on to the side of his rocket right here. Now, I explained in the other module how that we make a circle out of paper to go over the tube, and how we can fold that paper into 4 sections, and wherever the crease is, that's where your marks for your fins go. If you use that to line it up, it lines up really well. And so what I did with the fins is I asked my student, what did I do with the other fin? All right, here it is. I asked this student, I said, okay, first thing you need to do is you need to take this fin and you need to glue the inside of it. And so I had him glue the inside of it and then put it together like this. And then I had him put it underneath something heavy on the edge of the table. In this case, we used one of my teacher's edition books. And so you can put it in the edge of a book, but you don't want the glue running out, so you need to wipe off any excess. But you want to glue this to where it stays in this position. And so that's what he's done with these fins right here. And so now the fins are ready to glue onto the rocket. Now, I would show you gluing on these fins to this rocket, but first of all, I think you know how to do it yourself. And also, I don't want to glue these on because this belongs to one of the students, and I want him to get the joy of gluing his own fins onto his rocket. So anyway, this is how they mount right here. You just glue it onto the side and you are ready to go. Again, making sure that it's lined up with your marks, making sure that it is straight. Now there's one more thing I want to tell you about this, about the circle of paper that you put on here. And that is, you can also use this to put on your launch lugs. Now, what in the world is a launch lug? Well, let me show you something right here. Okay? On this rocket right here, you're going to see a couple of pieces of tape. That's because I never actually got to glue it down. But what I've done, let's see if I can pull that off there. Okay? Here is my launch lug. What is a launch lug? It is a section of a straw. You just cut off a straw about an inch long, and you find out where you want to put it, and then you can glue that on there. Put a little glue on it, tape it down for a little while. Once it dries, then you can put some more glue on it just to make sure that it stays secure. Well, what do you do? What is a launch lug for? Well, you know that when you launch a rocket off, it has to stay on the side, on the launch pad. You need something to hold it there. And so that launch lug on the side of your rocket goes down over the wire, and once it goes down over that wire, it just holds it in place. And the question is, where do you put the launch lugs? Well, for your smaller rockets, you want to put it near the balance point of the rocket. That's when you have your recovery device in this end and your engine in this end, and you kind of balance it and figure it out. For the most part, if you put it pretty much in the middle, you're safe, depending on the size of your rocket. Now, if you want to go crazy like I do with some experiments, then you might want to experiment with maybe putting extra launch lugs. I have one rocket that's about 3 or 4 feet long, and so I definitely wanted more launch lugs on that one. But all it is a straw that is fixed to the side of your rocket that holds it on there while you're getting ready to launch it. All right, that's it for this module. I'm going to try to demonstrate some more things here in the next few minutes. And one of the things that I do want to demonstrate is making a nose cone. And I will explain why the nose cone is important and show you how to do that. It's an interesting process, but it's the best one I've found so far. I hope there's a better one out there. Okay, one more thing about gluing your fins down, and that is, I don't know if you can tell from the camera angle, but I told my students, I said, put lots of glue on this. So they would put some glue on it, let it dry, put some more glue on, let it dry, put some more glue on, let it dry, and what they have is a really smooth rocket. Okay, so it's going to reduce the drag from the wind resistance on it. So I like to put multiple coats on here, and the other thing it does too is it really secures your fins. So I hope that works, and I will see you in the next module. Hello everyone. For this module you will not be able to see my face because I need to show you how to make one of these nose cones, and you need to be able to see my hands clearly. So here's a couple of different nose cones that we have made. And so I wanted to show you how to do this. Again, I'm not going to be talking about the painting part of it because this is how to construct it. Painting, I believe you can figure that out by yourself. But anyway, this is how to construct a nose cone. All right, the first thing you want to do is you have to decide how big your rocket is. Now, for most of us, we're going to have a rocket about this size, or maybe even a little bit smaller in diameter. You have to look at the diameter of the rocket here. And so you say, okay, what size is this? Well, after you figure out your diameter, then you need to find something round. A lot of times, just a lid from the kitchen will be all that you need. It could be from a butter dish, it could be from something else. But for this particular one, this isn't a lid, but it's another round piece of plastic that we found. And I'm going to show you what to do with this. Now, this is not ordinary paper here. You can use ordinary paper, but this paper is actually cardstock. So you need a heavier weight paper. It's going to work better for your nose cone. If you use a thinner paper, it's going to be weaker and you run the risk of a nose cone that's going to get crumpled up, and I don't want that to happen. So here we go. We're going to put the piece of round plastic. Again, you can use different things, but I found a round piece of plastic to use. It's the size I want, and I trace around the outside of that so that I have myself a perfect circle. Could you use a compass? Yes, you could use a compass. That would work just fine. A drawing compass would be great for this. But for this, I just used something round. Now, the next thing I do is I need to get rid of some of this excess paper. Now, that doesn't mean I need to throw it away. It just means that it's going to get in my way when cutting. So, a large piece of paper like this can be used for several other things, including making a motor mount. So, keep this handy. Okay, but try to conserve your paper as you use it. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut this circle out. Now, I'm trying to do this rather quickly because I don't want to just sit here and bore you with a bunch of cutting. But let me say a few things about the cutting. One of the things that I've noticed that kids have a problem with, and maybe often adults too, is following the lines when you're cutting. This is a real good time to practice it because you need to stay right on that line. Otherwise, you wind up with a rocket that's going to be all lopsided and wonky, and you don't want that. You want it to look pretty. And so just follow that line around there. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you also don't want it too choppy. So here we go. I'm almost done with this. And a good pair of scissors is a must. Now, some people can use a razor knife or a utility knife, and if you're good with that, then by all means go for it. I've used my utility knives quite a bit while making this rocket, but not necessarily for this part of the cutting. It just depends on the type of cutting I want to do. Okay, so there's my circle, and this is going to become my nose cone. Now, I need to find the middle of this circle. And the way I do that is actually kind of fun. You fold it. You fold it in half, but don't fold it all the way. Watch how I do this. I'm going to fold the two parts of the circle over. I can't really say two sides because the circle only has one side, right? All right, but I fold it over where it's even. And then somewhere in the middle here, I crease it. Okay, see how I creased it right there with my thumb and finger? All right, and then I take it again, and I fold it over, so now you have a quarter circle, and I crease that. Okay, so now I've creased it in the corner. Not pushed it all the way down, don't have creases all the way out, it's just in the middle part here. And I open it back up, and where those two creases cross, that's the middle of my circle. So, in order to help myself with that, I'm going to go ahead and put a little dot right there where they cross. That cross point is the middle of my circle. All right, so the next part is to cut a line which would be probably called tangent, I believe. from the edge of the circle to the middle of the circle. Actually, a tangent line's a little bit different than that, if I remember my calculus correctly. But anyway, just get a line that goes straight in from the edge of the circle to the middle. Now, here's the fun part. Here's where you get to make your cone. You just take your circle and you just fold it over the other part. And there you have a cone. Well, wait a minute, that's too big. Yes, it is too big, unless, of course, you wanted it that way. So we need to get it to the right size. See, that's just way too big. That's just not going to work. That's like a Chinaman's hat on top of a rocket. So we don't want that. So we want to get something that is a little bit skinnier. So let's see if I can roll this around and get it to the approximate size of the rocket. So this part gets a little tricky, and you might have to have a third hand. Okay, that's a lot better. It's just a little bit big. So we're going to go ahead and make it smaller. So you take that inside and you twist it on around like that. Whoops, and you can't let go. Okay, and let's see here. All right, and let's see how this one works. Is this going to work for me? Ah, yes, that will work for me. So that's where I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it right there, and I'm going to put a little piece of tape on it. I used a lot of Scotch tape and a lot of masking tape for these rockets. Okay, there we go. There's my nose cone. Well, is it sitting exactly straight? Not quite. It seems to me like it's a little bit off, which means it's a little higher on one side than it is the other. Well, at this point, you can take your scissors and you can start trimming off the bottom part until you get it where it sits pretty straight. Now again, mine's just a little bit crooked, so I think it's a little high on that side. Let me go ahead and cut some of this off right here. All right, there we go. That's a little bit better. All right, so there is my nose cone. And what I like to do with the nose cones, first of all, I've used cardstock, so it's going to be stiff. There's several layers right here of cardstock, but I like to put a little bit of glue in the cone here and let that harden overnight. Well, how are you going to make that stay in one place? Well, just stick it right here in the top of your rocket, okay? And if you stick that in the top of your rocket, hope you can see that on the camera there. If not, I'll just put it down here. You just set it up like that. Overnight, it'll start to get hard. Okay, but how are we going to put this cone on the top of my rocket? I need something with a cuff link that goes on the inside, a sleeve that goes on the inside. And so one of two things. First of all, if you're lucky, and I mean really lucky, of your collection of cardboard tubes, you will find another tube that goes exactly on the inside of the tube that you have. That's wonderful if you can find that. If not, okay, then you're going to have to come up with method number 2. And here is method number 2. I'm going to show you this rocket right here. Notice that it's got tape around it. Okay, that tape actually comes in handy for that nose cone and holding it in place. And I will show you why. Because what you want to do is you can cut off some of your rocket, about an inch of it, that just cut off a little sleeve like this. And once you have that sleeve, and that's where I use a utility knife to cut that off, then what you want to do is you want to cut a slit in that sleeve. Cut a section out of it. And the reason is you need a tube that's slightly smaller to go inside the fuselage of your rocket. So here's the fuselage of my rocket, and I put this little sleeve, I put it in here. Let's see if I got this one right. Yeah, I got it right. It's right there, and it's just a little bit off. Okay, so I might have to cut just a little bit more of that to take it off. But then I take a piece of tape, and let's get a piece right here. And now that it's just slightly smaller, I just go ahead and stick that piece of tape on there, on that sleeve part that I've made, and I can pull it out. Now I have a ring that will go on to the inside of my rocket and fit perfectly. You might have to experiment with this a little bit, but that's the nature of it. You have to experiment, you have to try it and experiment with that a little bit. And if it's too loose but barely fits, I'll give you a hint. Tape it. Put a piece of tape all the way around it, whether it's masking tape or whether it's Scotch tape. Tape it, put it back in. Does it fit? If it fits good, great. If it's too thick, you might have to take some of the tape off. So you don't want to use very much tape unless you've got a lot of wiggle room there. But you want to get something that fits perfect. Okay, next step in this, and that is on the nose cone, we have to put this sleeve or cup link on the nose cone, but we have to make sure that it's straight. So what you do is you take it and you put it into the nose cone and you say, okay, there it is right there, but if I put it like this, it's going to be all crooked. All right, so I need to straighten it out, and for this, there's probably a better way to do it, but I just eyeball it and make sure that it's not crooked. Okay, once I get that straight, then what I do is I take this back out and I take my glue, and I have looked to see where it goes to, and I put some glue right around the inside of this cone. Now it's okay if the glue starts to run down. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay? And then you take your sleeve and you stick it right there in the top of the, well, it's really the bottom of the nose cone, and you adjust it until you get it straight. Once it's straight, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and stick it back in your rocket and let that dry. And I'll put this on the side there because I'm not sure how well you can see it on the camera. Okay, you want to let this dry. That the cufflink part needs to dry into the nose cone. Once it dries, you're going to wind up with something that looks like this, and it'll be nice and stiff. Go ahead and put some extra glue on there. Put that glue on there, make sure that it stays stiff. Take some glue, smear it on the outside of your nose cone, let that dry. By the way, do not let it dry on the inside of it like this. That's probably not a good idea. Let it dry, if it's on the outside of the nose cone, let it dry separately. Otherwise, you're going to get it stuck to the fuselage. And what you wind up with is something that's going to fit right here in the top of your rocket, just like that. And there's my nose cone that goes with this rocket. And it fits pretty good. I like that fit. That means that when the rocket engine goes off, it's going to shoot a burst of gases, and it's going to, once it gets up to its apogee, they call it, the highest point, it's going to shoot a burst of gases, knock the nose cone off that's connected by a rubber band, and then the recovery device will come out. And the recovery device could be streamers or a parachute or something else that you might have. We'll talk about that in another module. But we want this nose cone to be able to pop off, but yet not be too loose. So I will see you all in the next module, or actually rather you will see me in the next module. And happy building. Hello again. I guess you can see my hands, can't you? Well, in this module, again, this is an area where you need to be able to see what I'm doing, so you won't see my face in this one. But I want to explain to you how to make the motor mount. And this one, just to let you know, is a 4-engine motor mount. That one is for the square rocket that I'm building. And I've not actually checked the size on it recently. I did check it earlier. But I want to see if this thing goes in here. And sure enough, it's going in pretty well. So there it is. There's the motor mount. Now I'm not going to glue that in yet, but that is a 4-engine motor mount. Now that's not what this video is about, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one off to the side and hope that I can pull that out later. All right, so here we go. This is what you're going to be making for your rockets. Okay, and they do look a little bit wonky. A little bit wavy. It's like, what's wrong with that thing? It's okay, because this is going on the inside of your rocket. And in order to put that on the inside of the rocket, it's going to be glued in. Okay, so you put some glue on the inside of the rocket, and then you put some glue on your motor mount, and you push it up in there, and it goes up in
probably about to right there, okay? And that's how it mounts inside the rocket. You let that dry overnight, it gets nice and stiff, put maybe some extra glue on it just to make sure that it stays, and you are good to go. Now let's talk about making this thing. This is not the easiest part of the rocket to make. In fact, this is probably the hardest part of the rocket to make. And so I'm going to explain how to make the motor mount, how to make it really easily and really simply, but at the same time, you have to understand it's not going to be perfect. Okay, so here's what we do. All right, first of all, you need a rocket engine of the size engine that you want to use. This one happens to be a B64, but I found out that A, B, and C engines are all the same diameter. So this will work for any of those engines. And what we do first is we need the inside measurement of our fuselage of a rocket. Now, you can do this in a couple of different ways. First thing you can do is you can take a piece of paper. Let me set these to the side like this. And this is probably what most people will do. They'll take a piece of paper in the cardstock, okay, and they'll set their rocket down on that, and they will trace the outside of the rocket. The only problem with doing this, okay, the only problem with doing this is that if you cut on the outside of the tube, it's going to be just a little bit too large to fit in here. And so I told my students that they need to actually cut on the inside of where that is. Now, if you have a steady hand, you can draw that around and have a good mark to cut off with. But I found out something else. I said, hey, maybe I need something to stamp it with. So I got an index card here. This is actually from a library book. I got one of those, and I got one of the tubes that I was using, and I borrowed an ink pad from one of my fellow teachers. And so I put my tube down on my ink pad like that, and then I stamped that tube right there onto the paper, and that gave me a mark that has the inside diameter of the circle. Now, let's talk about that for just a minute. Let's see if I can find my other ones right here, and I will get those out. All right. And so what did I have to do? Well, this was the tricky part. Okay, this was the tricky part. You have to cut this out, that circle, that round part. Okay, you have to cut that out. Be as careful as you can. And here's my method. Okay, first part of my method is this. Let's go ahead and use one of these green ones so you can see it on the camera. And so I get rid of the excess paper, but hold that back for later. And then I start cutting around on the inside, right where the white and the green come together. Okay? And when I finish cutting that, I should have a circle that nearly matches the inside diameter of my tube. Now, there's another method for this that you can use, and that is you can take that little sleeve that you made earlier for the nose cone, and you can trace the outside of it, because that will be the inside diameter of your tube also. All right, so there it is. It is the inside diameter of the tube, and so now I need to put another circle on the inside of that. Well, how do I do that? In other words, I need this. You see how I've got a circle right here, and then, of course, the outside circle? I need that. Well, it just so happens that for size A, B, and C engines, that an expo marker from a whiteboard is just barely larger than the engine, which is exactly what we want. So you can either take the engine and stick it on the paper yourself and trace the outside of it, or you can get an expo marker and you look at that expo marker, put it over top of that paper, make sure it's in the middle, look over top and around the sides, make sure it's even on all sides, hold it down,
and then draw your circle around here, and that will be the size that you need. Now the question is, well, wait, Mr. Ramey, it looks kind of messy. Yeah, it does, but it doesn't matter because this is going inside and nobody will see it. All right, so now we have our circle, and the question is, what do? We've cut it out of the main part. We need to get the circle cut out. But, I mean, really, this is a big pair of scissors to stick in that little tiny circle. Well, there's a trick, and I'm going to show you that trick. Go ahead and cut that circle from the outside, and then go to the other circle and cut it right on that line. And so that's what I'm doing right now. It usually doesn't take me too long. I can usually get it done within just a few seconds. But I have been doing this for a while, and I've made quite a few of these, so I got pretty good at it. The more you make, the better you get, most of the time. Sometimes we get worse. And I'm almost done here. And now I have what I need. There's my circle. I don't need that anymore. But here are my 2 donut rings. But there's a problem. They've got a cut in them. Well, there's an amazing thing called tape. I really like tape. Tape is one of the best inventions of the modern times. And so you take your little piece of tape. I prefer Scotch in this case. Take a little bit of Scotch tape and put it on here and tape this back together where you just cut it apart. Now, is that going to matter for strength? Not really, because once you put the glue on this, it's going to get its strength back. And so let me go ahead and tape this one so that we have 2 equal donuts, I call them, donut rings. All right, there we go. Now that's ready to go. All right, so we have our 2 donut rings, and we have this part of the fuselage. Well, wait a minute, how do we make that? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Here we go. We take our rocket engine, and we take our index card, and we start wrapping it around. Or we can use the cardstock paper. They're both cardstock. And let's see. All right, so I'm going to cut this one off right about there. All right, so that's cut off. And I'll bring it, actually I like it to overlap just a little bit. I didn't get much of an overlap on this one. And I go ahead and I tape it together. Okay, so there it is. I tape it together, and so I wind up with my engine inside this little cylinder. Okay, now once I get it taped together, and I need to go ahead and run a piece of tape all the way down this. Okay, and you might see a little split on this one. Really, you do want it to overlap. It works better if it does overlap. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to keep using this for a few minutes. And there it is. There's our rocket engine, and it fits just fine right inside there. I can pull it out, I can put it in, but yet there's not much slippage. Okay, that's good. Now the next part I need to do is I need to put in my clip. This clip is probably one of the most important parts of your rocket. And you say, well, where do we get a clip like that? Well, that's an interesting question, because these particular clips are made out of something that you probably would never guess. You can make them out of just about any piece of wire. A paper clip would work just fine. Any type of good wire that's pretty sturdy and going to stay in place that springs back. You need a springy wire. But I tell you what I used for this. I had to change my windshield wipers on my car. And when I changed the windshield wipers and took the other part off, you know that it has the arm attached to it, and then it's got the rubber piece, and then right at the side of the rubber piece are 2 thin, flat wires. And that's what this is. This is a piece from the windshield wipers on my car. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, well, I don't want to just go tear up my windshield wipers and pull the wire out of them. Well, the reality is you probably do. In fact, your windshield wipers have probably been on that car a little bit too long, and it's time to get new ones. So just go down to Walmart, buy a new pair of windshield wipers, and cannibalize your old ones. And there you go. You are ready to go. So again, I'm kind of thrifty when I do this. I don't want to spend a lot of money, and so far, I have not spent any money on this rocket. Okay, so here we go. I'm just using leftover parts. And what I do is, let me pull this engine out of here. What I do is I need to make a L over the top of the engine, okay? I need to run it down to the bottom of the engine. I need to make another 90-degree angle there, but I don't want it to go across, and I need to make it go just a little bit in so that it'll hold the engine in, but yet I need to be able to get a hold of it with my finger to pull it off. And so that's what I've done right here, and let me go ahead and demonstrate on one of these. Okay, this one right here would be a good one to demonstrate on. Okay, my rocket engine, I want to put it in here like this, and I push it down in there, and now it stays in. And when it takes off, that little clip up here, the L part, is going to hold on to it. And so that is secure. Then after I've shut it off and I want to change out the engine, I come down here, I pull my clip back, and I pull my rocket engine out, and I'm ready to put a new one in. Okay, so I'll show you that part again in just a minute, but let's get to this part right here. This is the part where it gets interesting. Okay, I take my two donut rings, and let's see, let's go ahead and put this clip on. I want to go ahead and clip this together here. And so what I want to do is I want to put my engine back into my mount, and I want to go to where that engine goes to at the top right here. And I've actually got it in backwards at the moment, but that's fine. I want it sticking out about 1/4 of an inch at the bottom, and I go in here to where the top of this engine is, and I press that in there, and it goes right through that cardstock, and it goes against my engine. Well, what do I do now? Well, it needs to stay in place. So I take a little bit of tape, and I put on here, and now my engine clip is going to stay in place. Next thing I want to do is I want to take these two little donut rings, and I want to take those donut rings and place them onto the engine mount and drag them down just a little bit. All right, and this might get just a little tricky, but I think you guys can handle it. All right, it goes on that part pretty well. And I want to take this one and I want to put it on. And now when I do this, I want to make sure and put this bottom engine mount far enough back that I can have a little bit of play in my clip, because I'm going to need to get this engine out of there after the rocket fires off. So I would go down maybe about 1 inch total, and then I can still get my rocket engine out of there. Now, once it's like this, it's almost ready. What you need to do is get some more glue, and I just used Elmer's glue, and you put glue around this ring, and you put glue around this ring, and then you set it there and leave it until it dries. And then when you come back in the morning, you look at it and you say, well, I think it needs a little bit more glue, so you go ahead and maybe glue the other side of the rings and make sure there's not too much excess, but you glue them and make them nice and stiff, and pretty soon you have a motor mount. And then this motor mount, eventually you're going to put glue on it, you're going to glue it into the inside of the rocket like this, and make it where the rocket engine or the engine mount is just barely sticking out a little further than the edge of the end of the rocket there. And that's about where you want it. All right, and so that is the end of this module on making the motor mounts. I hope you have good luck with this, and I hope I've explained it well. If I haven't, feel free to search YouTube and see what other people have done, because there's some other ways to do this, but this has been my method and it's worked well for me. So have a good day, and we'll talk to you next module. Hey guys, in this device you probably won't see my face again, but that's because the rocket's more important than seeing me on it. As you can see, this is a rather long rocket that I built a couple of years ago, and Did some fancy painting on it, had some fun with it. I really like this one. But the main part I want to show you is here down at the end, and that is the recovery device. Now, what is a recovery device? A recovery device could be a parachute, it could be streamers, it could be a propeller. There's various different parachutes or recovery devices that you can find and find how to make on the internet. This is my favorite right here. And let's see if I can get this in place. I'm going to turn this way. It doesn't look like much, and I have to be honest with you, it's actually rather ugly. But all this is 2 strips of plastic, or maybe it's a strip folded over of plastic. Came from a trash bag. It's not cut very well, but the idea is if I had a parachute and I send this rocket up and I don't have a lot of room, if there's any breeze, that rocket is going to drift a long ways and has a chance of falling on somebody's roof or maybe falling in some trees or something. And so I like to use streamers, okay? And so I made my own streamers here. Do they have to be nice and smooth and pretty? No, they don't. Actually, I don't mind having them jagged because that creates more drag and slows the rocket down, yet at the same time allows it to come down quickly to the ground so it doesn't drift. And so I've had good luck with this. As long as your rocket goes up straight. Now, if you get a little bit of wind while your rocket's going up, it may be shooting way to the side. But anyway, here it is. Here's what I do. I put the streamers on. I used a couple of large rubber bands, and I affixed them into the inside of the tube here. I just used some paper and glue, and then of course tied them around the trash bag streamers, and also fixed it into the nose cone right here. And let me see if I can show you this nose cone. I don't know if we can zoom up on that, but inside the nose cone, what we've done is we've taken and folded over a piece of paper and folded it over that rubber band and then glued it down. And this is just regular Elmer's glue. It usually holds quite well if you do it right. And it might be a good idea after you glue it in the first time to put another layer on it. Another thing that I did is I stapled it, not to the rocket itself, but to the paper down over the rubber band so that it stayed just a little bit better. But anyway, you fold the paper over the rubber band, you glue them both into the ends of the rocket, and then you want to talk about, you want to figure out how do I pack this thing up? Because I have to stuff all this in there, but if I stuff it in there too tight, it's not going to come out very well. So what I like to do with the streamers is I will start at one end and I will just start rolling in a very tight roll. Now, again, I said I don't want to do it too tight. I said I don't want to stuff it too tight. But putting it in a tight roll, it can still unroll down here. And I'm doing this kind of sideways just because of the camera angle. And so I roll this on up small enough that it will go inside the fuselage of the rocket. And once I get it small enough, there it is, I have a nice tight roll, then I can put it into my rocket. But before I do that, I want to put at least 3 pieces of wadding in there. Now, what in the world is wadding? Wadding usually comes with your rocket engines, and all it is, it's a type of paper that is fire retardant. And so it will keep your parachute or streamers from melting when the rocket engine does its final blasts and blasts the nose cone off of the rocket. Because at first the rocket's going up and the excess energy is going out of the back of the rocket. But it's made in such a way that when it gets up to its final point and it stops burning, there's a few seconds of a delay, and then all of a sudden it shoots out gas the other direction towards the nose of the rocket and shoots out the nose cone and the streamer or parachute or your recovery device from the top of the rocket. So I would put some wadding down in there, and then I would push my streamers in there, and then I have to push, of course, the rubber band, or you can use elastic for this, and push that down in there.
And there I have it. Well, let's see how this works. I'm going to scoot back here. How easy does it come off? Let's try it. I'm going to see if I can blow this out. And there it goes. There's my streamer. So you see how it works. So now it's your turn. Go ahead and build that streamer or build that parachute. Parachutes honestly look really cool. But if you're worried about losing your rocket, I would go with streamers, because streamers allow it to come down slowly, but not drift too far. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you do a good job on your rocket build.